So I think this comes from CinemaCon. Let's have a. Oh no, don't. Oh, I thought it like glitched out for a second. Oh, I was gonna be so mad. Okay, Marvel adds possible fourth movie to 2028 slate. Wait, what? I thought we were slowing down. Disney announced on Wednesday that Marvel Studios is scheduled to release an untitled movie on December 15th of 2028. That is 3 years from now. Almost had to get out my toes. It's scheduled release for February, May, November, with previously announced films. So now there's 4. Should all 4 films hold onto those dates, which is not nearly certain, it would be unexpected move for the studio, given Bob Iger's recent public admission that they've lost little focus by making too much. We all know that in our zeal to flood our streaming platforms with more content, that we turned to all of our creative engines, including Marvel, and had them produce a lot more, Iger said during an investor call in May. We've also learned over time that quantity does not necessarily beget quality. Oh, yeah? I like baguettes. And frankly, we've all admitted to ourselves that we lost a little focus in making too much. By consolidating a bit and having Marvel focus much more on their films, we do believe that will result in better quality. Now, what they're leaving out is that right after this, he deadass said, Thunderbolts represents that new change, and then it bombed in the box office. But let's just read on. It is quite unclear, however, whether Marvel will actually release 4 films in 2028. Marvel has a history of holding on to release dates for future projects well past when those films could realistically make those dates to ensure they remain available for other films from the company. Marvel's Blade was removed from its November 2025 release date only after Disney was ready to slot 20th Century Studios film Predator Badlands in its place. Yeah, that's kind of interesting, huh? For 2026 and 2027, Marvel has significantly winnowed its feature slate. What the hell is this word? I don't like it. After the Fantastic Four first steps open in July, the studio is producing 2 films in 2026. Spider-Man Brave New Day, a co-production with Sony Pictures, in July, and Avengers Doomsday in December, and 2 films in 2027, an untitled project in July, and Avengers Secret Wars in December. Secret Wars is meant to be the finale of the multiverse saga, after which Marvel is expected to pivot a saga centered around characters inherited in Disney's 2019 acquisition of the 20th Century Fox, the X-Men. Thunderbolts director Jake Schreier has been tapped to helm the MCU's first mutant movie, although... Wow. So they're pretty much confirming Jake Schreier as the director. Interesting. Although actors from the Fox movies will appear in Doomsday. Other Marvel projects in development that could wind up in 2028 include Blade, Black Panther 3, and a Fantastic Four sequel. Okay, wow, wee wah. Now, that's the official line, right? That's the official company line here. And this little bit of hair is bugging me, so I'm going to pull that up. But let's talk about the unofficial shit, man, because that's what is more interesting. When this news broke, a lot of folks had one idea. And that idea was, what if Secret Wars is 2 movies? Now, here's the thing. Here's the deal with that. That is not a novel idea. That is not a new rumor. That is something that's been very well established. And in fact, if you go all the way back to the massive leak that happened around the time of Quantum Mid-Mania, that's the actual name of the movie, you will remember that there was discussion even in that big leak that they were considering splitting Secret Wars into 2 films. Okay? Now, more recently, within the last year, we heard a lot of smoke about that. There's this new guy, James Mackwell, on Twitter that we technically don't know whether or not he's legit or not. Picked a really interesting time to kind of pop onto the scene with a massive delay between, movies. But he's out there saying some kind of wild shit. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, before Marvel officially pulled out of Hall H, which is something I would never do, James Mackwell had reported that during Hall H, Marvel was going to reveal a lot of shit, including multiple movies that were still going to be in the saga, and the fact that Secret Wars would be split into 2 parts. Okay? And it just seemed so crazy. It seemed so fucking wild. I was like, man, like this is pretty crazy. Again, there's precedents. There's like some smoke there, longstanding rumors, etc. And we know for sure that Marvel Studios is grappling with the scale of this big story they're trying to tell, right? And like, dude, they just delayed both of those movies by 7 months each. That's huge. So obviously there's a lot they're still trying to do, and it's a very ambitious group of films. So after this came out yesterday, it wasn't just people speculating. There were like a whole bunch of random scooper accounts and like insiders and everything that were saying, oh man, what if it's 2 movies? What if Secret Wars is actually being split into 2 films? Which would be so cool. I think a lot of us would enjoy it. And I think that there's like a basic pro and a con here. There's probably a lot of pros and cons, but like I think this is really what it comes down to. On the pro side, this would give Marvel more time to tell this story. It would give them more time to make sure that the multiverse saga felt like it came to a satisfying conclusion. It would give them more time to establish how the end of this multiversal saga leads into the X-Men saga, etc. Right? So there would be that's the basic pro of the whole situation. The con, though, and I think this is kind of the rub, the con is it just extends a period in time that I think is kind of just uncomfortable for Marvel. I think the reason that I think they want to get this shit over with. You know what I mean? And that's a rough way to say it. I know they probably wouldn't describe it that way, but I think they totally like think about it from this perspective. They know they fucked everything up. I mean, according to James Gunn, Luis D'Esposito is literally telling him in private, yeah, Disney fucked us. The MCU is kind of like that and shit. And it's like, whoa, right? So they know how bad it is. And I think in part, the way they're viewing the end of this is like, just throw everything at them. All the X-Men, Doctor Dooms, Iron Man, OG Avengers, throw every goddamn missile we have, like fire the missiles, like give them everything that we have, and let's get this shit over with. Let's soft reboot. Let's bring in the X-Men, and let's get back to business. I think that's a part of the process. So technically, the con here is that if they decide to split this thing into 2 movies, they get a whole nother year of living in this kind of like icky, like, oh man, like what the fuck kind of situation, right? So I think that's the basic pros and the cons, guys. And I guess the best way that I can, like, my best look at what's actually going on is I would imagine Marvel's probably aware of all of this stuff. And I think they're probably leaning in the direction of like, let's just get it over with. So I don't think they're actually going to split the film up into 2 parts. And then that was sort of corroborated by some other reporters yesterday. I think Daniel said he has heard nothing of them splitting it into 2 parts. Kind of an interesting way to phrase that, because I know there were some rumblings years ago. But at the same time, like, yeah, he's pretty solid on this sort of stuff. Nobody else solid is out there saying that it could happen. I think Alex Perez went as far as to say he would enjoy it, but he didn't confirm or deny or like even hint that it was real. Highly doubt it's real, guys. Okay, so what does that mean then? Well, that means we're probably looking at one of the other projects. As they brought up in the thing, you know, you've got Black Panther 3, which we know Coogler is writing a character for Denzel. Coogler's really excited about that. So that's pretty interesting. We have Shang-Chi 2, which I know Destin Daniel Crichton still wants to make. And I think he's got ideas and things that he wants to do for that. We have a sequel to the Fantastic Four, which is wild, okay? I don't know that I thought we would get a sequel like that, because technically the Fantastic Four are going to have 2 sequels right after their movie, because they're intimately involved in Doomsday and Secret Wars, right? So it's a little wild. It's a little wild that you'd be like, oh, a sequel to the Fantastic Four movie. Brother, they've got 2 sequels coming out, like right after that. What you really mean to say is a sequel to Secret Wars with the perspective of the Fantastic Four, right? So that's weird. Is it even a Fantastic Four movie? I'll say this, okay? It strikes me as strange. At the same time, though, considering the Hickman Fantastic Four movie and the way that ends, which is that Reed basically tricks Doom into admitting that Reed would have done a better job saving the multiverse than Doom. Okay? After he does this, the Beyonder, Owen Reese is like, oh, really? Well, guess what? Now he's got the power. And then, Reed has all the power of the Beyonders. Okay? And in the comics, Reed takes the power of the Beyonders. He sort of pulls out these different copies of Owen Reese, the Molecule Man, because the Molecule Man is like infinite. Like he's just the same guy all over the multiverse, right? So you kind of like take a little bit of the Beyond power, Reed like mixes it up, and then he uses his son's power, Franklin Richards, who can literally create universes, and they recreate all of the universes within the multiverse, okay? And we think Secret Wars will likely end in a similar way because they're building up Franklin right now. He's going to do crazy powerful stuff. Doom is going to use him to do even more crazy powerful stuff. And then I think it's probably going to end in that sort of way, okay? Now, considering that, if that happens, then a potential sequel to that with the Fantastic Four set in the new MCU reboot, yes, this might be the move. The Fantastic Four could be a great group of characters to explore what the new MCU looks like, the mutant phenomenon, stuff going on out there in the galaxy, because we've heard that maybe Annihilus, maybe the Eternals or the Celestials or Mad Celestials or something like that, like maybe that's also like a big part of the Phase villain, like the Thanos of the Phase or whatever. So with that in mind, sure, completely makes sense that you're going to potentially get the sequel to Fantastic Four with those characters setting up the new universe. Here's the problem, though. Like, what's up with Black Panther 3, Shang-Chi 2, Blade? Like, what's up with all these movies? Now, Blade, because they've taken so long, is probably fine. It can just exist in the new MCU, right? Black Panther 3, like, dude, I thought Black Panther 2 was an impossible task. You know what I'm saying? And like, bro, you're dealing with losing generational talent, somebody that you admired and looked up to, and you're dealing with massive corporate considerations, because you got to remember, Black Panther 1 was a phenomenon, dude. It was a fucking phenomenon, and it was just so meaningful and important to so many different folks, business folks, audience members, different communities. It was massive. So you go into Black Panther 2, dealing with all of that, the loss of Chad, the legacy of the thing, corporate considerations, big business. Brother, I do not envy Coogler and what he had to go through to make that second film, right? But now, you think about a third Black Panther movie. How the fuck is it the case that the third Black Panther movie might be the most difficult, most weird, most, like, challenging to pull off for Coogler yet? Because he's going to have to figure out, we're about to talk about it, there's a new Black Panther probably popping up in Doomsday, probably popping up in Secret Wars, right? It's this one dude. So you're going to have a new Black Panther, a new universe. Shuri's plot of the next two movies is going to have to impact that. Like, dude, what? Black Panther 3 is going to be very fucking hard to pull off, dude. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's tough. That's tough. And I think even Shang-Chi too. I mean, again, Shang-Chi is about to have, I think, pretty good sizable amount of story in these next two Avengers movies. Then the next movie has to be completely different. It has to be completely different. So it's like, it's crazy. And I don't understand. Like, I get it. You're putting 4 movies in 2028. Like, is that really how you want to kick off the new version of the MCU? Like, I don't know, bro. There's just some questions here, insofar as what different movies these could be. When does X-Men come out? Because technically, we don't even know what the July movie of 2027 is. Is that X-Men? Doesn't seem like it. Is that World War Hulk? What? Is that Doctor Strange 3? What? Is there literally nothing? So you can see, and one sort of last thing I'll add to this is that, you know, sometimes we question, well, how do we know this about the story? Or how do we know that about the story? Where are the leaks and the rumors coming from? If they're building the whole phase 7, phase 8 thing right now, then they generally know how Secret Wars is going to end. Right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that is going to be in consideration that they have to think about, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, a fourth movie in 2028 is wild. There's a lot of speculation. I do not think they should do 4 movies. And if anything, like, just delay some of those other ones. I mean, at this point, Blade will be a decade late. So what's another year or two? You know, like, let that happen. But that's the report, guys. New film, 2028. A lot of speculation. Interesting time for Marvel Studios. Would love to know your thoughts on that. Thanks for watching. And if you like this clip, smash a like on the actual video and subscribe to this channel. That way more of these clips get into your feed. I've also linked the full episode below if you want to check out the entire thing, including the Q&A we do with fans. You can also watch this show live. We do it live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can also find all of my content, including the videos I put on my main YouTube channel, on the podcast feed.